Right before recording this, I had the best scrambled eggs ever with a little bit of hot sauce. So the vibes are immaculate. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions. What's up, everyone? It is Josh Butts here from No Butts About It. If you have not hit that subscribe button yet, please do so. It helps us out so much. We're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions and their 2025 NFL draft, what I liked, what I didn't like. As always, give your opinion. And just as a reminder, obviously, the player is part of the grade, but also, especially with this Lions draft, there's going to be some instances where a really important part of it is going to be where they were taken and what was given up because Brad Holmes did a lot of trades during this draft. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Tyleek Williams, their first round pick out of Ohio State at pick 28. I gave this pick a B grade. And now here's my reasoning for this. We talked about it all season last year. We talked about it with Dion. Me and Chus talked about it a lot. The Detroit Lions needed a pass rush. They needed depth at the defensive end position, especially when Aiden Hutchinson went down. Defensive end would have made sense here. But that being said, I completely get why they went defensive tackle here. Aleem McNeil tore his ACL in December, and he's going to miss the first few games of the season. They also are going to lose some depth after 2025 with some guys who are likely to move on or are just older. Tyleek Williams moves pretty quickly for a guy his size. That Ohio State defense was locked down last year. Obviously, they won the national championship. So he comes from a great program. But Williams' game isn't mainly in the pass rush, which was what the Lions really needed. He's more of a run defender, but he can apply pressure. To me, this looks like a planned replacement for DJ Reader, who has a very similar playing style. He can apply that pressure. He'll occasionally get a sack, but ultimately he's a run stopper. And uh, he could be a starter this season with McNeil missing those first few games. He'll definitely be a rotational piece, and he'll be alongside DJ Reader. I I don't know how much he'll actually add to the pass rush. I expected the Lions to really go after that pass rush earlier on, and they didn't. They didn't really go for a defensive end until later in the draft, which we'll talk about. But Tyleek Williams, not a bad player. Completely understand the pick, but also not sure that he is going to help that need that they had of a pass rush. But he'll be a starter or a rotational piece in his rookie season. Next up, a guy I really liked, a guy a lot of Bengals fans really liked, Tate Ratledge out of Georgia, round two, pick 57, grade A. So this one hurt a little bit when I was watching the draft. He went to a team that I kind of root for, though. Lions fans, you've been good to us here, and I always root for you guys as long as you aren't playing the Bengals or the Colts. Um, Thank you, Lions Nation. But the mullet man himself, he's got that great hair. He just was someone Brad Holmes had to have, understandably so. He has been fantastic at Georgia. That offensive line, they've been putting out some great players. I'm excited about Dylan Fairchild, who the Bengals grabbed. Tate Ratledge is just a better prospect, though, than Fairchild. The Lions lost their starting guard in free agency, Kevin Zeitler. He was also older, so they're probably going to have to get a guard anyway. So this is just, you know, killing two birds with one stone, getting a young guy and getting a replacement for Kevin Zeitler. Ratledge comes in, he's going to be immediately competing for the starter role. He may not have it right away, but ultimately he is the replacement for Zeitler in a lot of ways. Christian Mahogany shows promise, but hasn't really locked that role down yet. He hasn't played a full season as a starter. And Graham Glasgow has experience at the position, but he's older. So ultimately, if you're just kicking the can down the road, if you don't come up with a plan to replace Kevin Zeitler. And so, worst case scenario, Tate Ratledge sits behind Glasgow or Mahogany for a season. And then I think ultimately he will be moved into a starting guard position. He's got good foot movement and he's very competitive. and that matches his strength when he is going against defenders. You can see that he wants to come in and he wants that starting position. He doesn't want to hear any talk about there being a competition. In his mind, that position is already his, and that matches his physical attributes as well. So Tate Ratledge, grade A, great pickup for the Detroit Lions offensive line, who've always had a great offensive line, and this is just going to continue that legacy. Now, this one, Isaac Tesla, out of Arkansas, round 3, pick 70. I gave this a C minus. And again, we're grading the pick, not necessarily the player. This pick was weird to me in round 3. The Lions have picked up Jamison Williams 5th year and locked down Amon-Ra long term. You could argue they need depth, but Tesla doesn't really fill the roles needed, in my opinion. He's 6'4", so he is, I believe, the second tallest. I think Tim Patrick is 6'5", so he's the second tallest wide receiver that the Lions have. But he doesn't have a ton of experience going deep, and he does go deep sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to make sure that I include some of those deep routes on the tape over the top, because I've seen a ton of people online saying Isaac Tesla never goes deep. That is false. But what is true is he has a lot of experience playing short routes out of the slot, and he doesn't go deep a ton. And I don't know if that's because of his ability to track the ball. He definitely has the athletic capabilities, and he definitely has the size to, go up against DBs. But I don't know if Arkansas just, didn't use him right. What happened? But he never really had a phenomenal season. The other thing is the Lions traded their 2025 third and 2026 thirds for Tesla, a 2025 sixth that they would eventually trade for Miles Frazier later on, who we'll talk about, and a 2026 sixth. That is a lot of assets to trade up for this guy in the third round. And we're talking about someone who could be very hit or miss. He has only played wide receiver for 5 years. When he went into Hillsdale, he was actually still a quarterback. So he doesn't have a ton of experience, at least compared to his wide receiver counterparts at the position. And he has a limited route tree, and he isn't great at getting separation off the line of scrimmage. Unless sometimes he would just go on a go route and he was able to, break away that way. But he rounds out his routes. He doesn't break out into his routes real well. But he does have that experience as a quarterback, which helps him see the field like one. So that should help. He also really has a great personality that just makes you kind of root for him. And he has a work ethic that a lot of teams, I was looking at interviews, what teams had said about him, and they said, yeah, his mindset won us over. He moved up the board because of what we saw in the scene in different competitions, and then he eventually earned a invitation to the combine. He wasn't on a lot of teams' boards, and then he just kind of forced his way onto their boards, especially with his Senior Bowl performance. So this ultimately for the Lions, I'm looking at round 3 here. This seems like a lot to give up for a guy who, in my mind, isn't going to fulfill an immediate role and is going to be more of a gadget guy at times. He can be shifty, he can make contested catches, but his ceiling is really wide receiver 3, in my opinion. There were also a ton of other great wide receivers available at the time still, whether if they needed a slot guy. There were guys like Jalen Knoll available. There were just other players that they could have gotten with this pick at the wide receiver position that I think would have made more sense. But he's having a great mini camp, so maybe he shines out. Maybe he just goes above and beyond. Again, I always root for these guys who I'm not necessarily high on, just because it's fun to be wrong. It's fun for these guys to transcend people's expectations, especially your own. So not rooting against him at all, but right now, based on what we've seen, I have to give the Isaac Tesla pick a C minus. But rooting for him again, like I said. Next up, Miles Frazier, who we talked about was part of that Tesla trade, or the trade led to the pick that was also traded to get Miles Frazier. This is another guard I really, really liked, especially on day 3 of the draft. Brad Holmes, agreed. Like I said, he traded up for him, giving away 2 6. And now with 3 guards competing for the starting job already, it's unlikely that Frazier will be competing for that starting job. But with Glasgow being older, like we said before, he could be a starter sooner rather than later. Maybe he sits behind a year, it's just a depth piece, and then eventually he works his way into that starting position. I could definitely see that. He mirrors defenders well, and he's able to adjust while bringing some size to the table. He's a big dude, and he's able to match defenders' movements fairly quickly for a guy his size. He does need some technique reform. Uh, he sometimes just kind of, does that thing where you just shove him to the ground. But the Lions are really good at developing O line guys. They know what they like, and they're really good at developing that. So if he's given time to develop, I think that he could be a great value pick for the Detroit Lions. And that's why on day 3, this pick, I'm giving them an A minus. Round 5, this isn't round 4. So, we're making some good moves here for the Detroit Lions. Next up, a guy whose story, if you have not read about him, you need to. Ahmed Hassanin, round 6, pick 196 out of Boise State. Gave this an A, and I am obsessed with this man. If there is one of these players that is going to make the 53 man, I need it to be him. I didn't know about a lot. I didn't know a lot about this guy, and so I had to look into him. I knew that he went to Boise State. I knew a little bit about him, but I was like, I want to know more before I talk about him. This is that defensive end that the Lions really needed. They finally took one in round 6, day 3. Like I said, they waited a lot longer than I thought they would. But his story is really what grabbed my attention. So he moved to Egypt with his dad when he was 6, where he lived for about 10 years. His half brother, who ended up becoming a football coach, stayed in America and suggested he come back to America. And Hassanin got interested and ended up playing football. Apparently, what happened was his brother and him were sitting on the couch one day while Hassanin was in high school, talking, or they were just watching an NFL game, and Hassanin saw Aaron Donald on TV. He was like, "What high school does that guy play for? That guy's huge. That guy's crazy." And his brother was like, "The NFL. He plays in the NFL. He doesn't play in high school." And so Hassanin was like, "Okay, I'm going to go to the NFL then." And so, a lot of people would have laughed. I mean, he hadn't started playing football till he was like 16. And you're just sitting there looking at Aaron Donald, arguably the greatest defender ever, and you're like, okay, I'm going to do that. But no, his brother looked at him and said, okay. So they started going to camps. His brother helped him learn pass rush from YouTube, and eventually he became a star at Boise State. He had 24 sacks in 48 games, which making it to the NFL is one thing for sure. But then the to go from like not really playing football till you're 16, making it to a college like Boise State is impressive all on its own. And he became like a great player for them. So he's already like way up there. He has shown an obsessive and fast ability to get to the quarterback. He is a very clearly motivated player. I mean, you have to be if you're going to do something like that. Right now, due to his lack of experience, he's a pure power and strength player, which is fun to watch, but won't always go well in the NFL. He also needs to work on his tackling, as sometimes he leaves his feet and just dives at the ball carriers and can lose them that way. Ultimately, this pick is a project. We know that. Everyone involved knows that. But it's deep and it's for a player with a huge ceiling. The risk to reward here is something a GM's dream of, and he has the drive to become a steal. This guy could be someone who we could be talking about years from now. Like, how did he not go in the first round? It's because of his inexperience, but he has the physical attributes needed. I gave this an A. I think this is a great pick. I hope that this is someone we're talking about for a really long time. Next up, Dan Jackson out of Georgia. Got another Georgia boy here. And we're going to actually round it out. Brad Holmes likes Georgia guys. Round 7, pick 230, backup. Uh, this pick, I think they could have gone a different way here. That's why I gave it a grade C. I'm not huge on it. He so Brian Branch has had a few injuries, including a scary neck injury in 2024. Jackson didn't allow a touchdown when targeted in 2024. However, he has to work on his tackling. He has a 19.5% missed tackle rate, which is just unacceptable in the NFL. He's also not good in the run game, which is concerning to me for the Detroit Lions, who are in the NFC North with running backs like Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones. Pass coverage is his strength, and he's a hard hitting tackler, but his form needs work. He when he tackles, he hits hard, which I know the Lions like, but I think they took a risk here in the name of depth. I will give him that his ability to pursue and track the ball could make him an effective special teamer to help his grade. But ultimately, I think this was a reach, even in round 7. Um, that 20% tackle rate just really is killing it for me. Need to see some improvement on that. Uh, Pick 230, grade C. Next up, Dominic Lovett out of Georgia, round 7, pick 244, grade B. So Lovett is another slot receiver who could wind up competing with Tesla for both special team snaps and wide receiver 3 snaps. However, Lovett has the upper hand as an experienced gunner on special teams, which could help him make the roster, earning one of 2 gunner spots. Lovett is a yards after catch merchant on bubble screens, which could also help him if he can get an open field. He does have problems with drops though. That will need to be fixed. Um, he looks really good when he gets the ball, and that's what these highlights are: is him getting the ball, and you'll see how good that he looks. But he does have a ton of drops as well, which is just problematic. If you're not catching the ball, your quarterback's not going to trust you, and if your quarterback can't trust you, you're not going to make it on the field. Ultimately, his ceiling is likely just in a depth or a gadget role in terms of pure wide receiver. But in the 7th round, I'm much more comfortable with a pick like that than I was in the 3rd, which was kind of why Tesla got a, a worse off grade. Again, rooting for all of these guys. Overall, I'm going to give this draft a B. It doesn't have a ton of immediate impact players. The Tesla pick makes me scratch my head still. Plenty of wide receivers like Jalen Knoll, who I mentioned earlier, or even some that went undrafted, such as Xavier Restrepo, have better production. More importantly, you wouldn't have given anything up if you just wanted to go slot. If you're just looking for a slot receiver who can go deep. If you wanted to get an X receiver, you could have taken someone like Ava Manor, who went to the Titans 136th overall. But there is a lot of potential here too. Guys like Frasier, Hassanin, and even Lovett. The Lions took a lot of risks. I know Lions fans, they live and die by Brad Holmes, though, and he's earned that right. So I'm not going to beat up the draft too much. And I'm rooting for all these guys. Like, there's a lot of guys whose personalities I like here. Hassanin, Tesla, I like his personality. Tate Ratledge, like, there's a lot of great personality on this team, but ultimately the grade reflects where the players were taken. So let me know what you think down below. I always like to hear from people. Maybe you think I'm crazy, but I know some of these guys have had great mini camps so far. So I think Lions fans should be excited. They're fighting. They're wanting that Super Bowl. They didn't like how last year ended, but I appreciate you all for listening. And until next time, go do something nice for someone.